Hi everyone, it's Sophia and welcome to my podcast and technically the first official episode on my podcast since the other two that dropped today are more like introductory episodes. So welcome. I definitely feel like the pressure is on for my first episode. I have to make sure I'm giving you guys an episode that you're going to love so that you want to stick around. But if not, trust me, I'm going to be talking about so many different topics. I'm sure you'll find something you love in at least one episode on my podcast as we move forward. So I actually recorded this episode already, but I was just editing the episode. And when I initially recorded the episode, it was back at the beginning of August. And it's a really great episode, I'm not gonna lie. But I just wanted to make it a little bit more current. I also feel like there are certain things that I just didn't touch on that I wanted to touch on in this kind of episode. So I've decided I'm gonna redo it, and hopefully I like this version a lot more so that I can share it with you guys, because I think it's a great way to start off the podcast, just because this is kind of like a journal of a 20-something-year-old living her life and sharing the stories and experiences and lessons she's learned. I know I've said that so many times, but I'm going to ingrain that because that really is what my podcast is about. Obviously, with time, it may change, but this is what it is right now. So today I wanted to talk about how the early 20s are such a bipolar period of time. And I know that this probably extends to the mid and late 20s as well. Given that I have no experience in those age groups, I can't really generalize, so I'm just going to stick with what I know, and that is the early 20s. As you guys probably know, I am 21 years old, still kind of on the younger age of the early 20s, but I feel like I've gotten some experience. I've gotten some idea as to what my life is going to look like during this period of time. I've already experienced some of it, and so I thought I would talk about it because I feel like ultimately a lot of my listeners will be in a very similar age group, and even if you guys are like in the later 20s, you probably can relate to this. Same with actually people who are younger than me, but I feel like this is really something that I've noticed with the early 20s. So when I initially came up with this episode, I was sort of thinking back on this trip that I took recently. I went to Boston for the first time in my life back in August, and I was visiting one of my friends, a really good friend of mine, and I was having the absolute best time of my life. I was living the dream, and I remember just I was getting very like nostalgic almost. I felt very grateful on this trip. Like I was really thinking a lot on this trip. And one of the things I was thinking about is how amazing my life is. But then when I was really thinking about it further, I was thinking about how crazy it is that the early 20s is such a bipolar time in your life. And what I mean by that is sometimes life is like absolutely slaying. You know how people sometimes say like the 20s are your peak, like it doesn't get better than that. You're young, you're attractive, like you seem to have like everything going for you. The future is ahead of you. There's so many opportunities, etc., etc. So you have that. Then you also have those moments in your life where you're like, I feel like my whole life is crumbling down and I have no clue what to do with it. Like I am actually so screwed. Like what is going on? And it's so funny how we can have these extremes happen within even a short period of time. This can happen within months. I've actually experienced this recently where I've gone kind of from the extremes and kind of back and forth too. And just the fact that we experience these extremes so often, at least I do. I hope other people do as well. But I feel like I'm not alone in this when I say that my experience with the 20s so far has been such a bipolar experience, and I honestly love it. I really do love it. I know that some people may be like, I wish I had some stability, and sure, do I crave stability sometimes? Totally. Sometimes I think about what life is going to be like when I'm finally married and I have a home and I have a family of my own, and like things just kind of have fallen into place. But the truth is, I feel like this kind of bipolarness is not just for the early 20s or the 20s in general. This is something that you experience throughout your life. So even though one day I may be quote unquote settled down with a husband and kids, that doesn't mean that my life is not going to be bipolar then either. It's just that I feel like when you're in your early 20s, everything feels so much more extreme and there is kind of a lack of stability. When I think about my life a year ago and then I think about the future like a year ahead, I just know that I'll be living such a different life in a year from now than I am currently. And when I look back to the past, I can think about what my life looked like a year ago, and it's literally so different from what my life looks like now. I mean, for example, like a year ago, I was in a happy relationship. I had just gone long distance. Like, I thought like I was so in love and all that. And right now, like currently, a year later, I am not even in contact with this person anymore. I'm figuring out how to do life on my own all over again. Just recently went no contact too. And it's like, I could not, if I were to talk to myself a year ago, like she would not imagine being in this position. Okay. Because she was dead set on the fact that she was going to end up with this man, or at least be with him for a very long time. So that says a lot. And then when I look to the future, it's like, when I really think about a year from now, I'll have graduated from college. I'll probably have a job. What job will I have? I have no clue. I probably will live in a different city. What city? Also no clue. Like there's so many unknowns, and as much as I can try and plan ahead or kind of create these dreams, this romanticized sort of this life that I want for myself in the future, there's no guarantee that I'm going to live it. And that is so crazy, but it's also so exciting. I really do love the idea that there's so much unknown, and there's also so much good that can come out of it. I know that unknown can be scary, and yeah, it is. Like, you know, when I think about kind of my life ahead, I think about the next year, because I feel like the next year is so big for me. I'm going into my senior year of college, and there's so much to figure out